Hello and welcome to the Red Chair podcast series. I'm Manuel Collazo, Vice President of Strategic Marketing and Business Development for Association Headquarters. For more than 45 years, AH has provided association leaders, volunteers, and staff with the most relevant and compelling industry news and information. Vice President of Marketing and Communications, and today we're here to talk about member acquisition and retention. With me is Jodi Araujo, CEO of National Air Duct Cleaners Association, and Jean Terry, Executive Director of American Society of Hand Therapists. Jodi, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about NADCA.
So, as you said, I'm Jodi Araujo, and I'm the CEO of the National Air Duct Cleaners Association. I've been at AH and managing this organization specifically for almost 11 years. When they came to us, they had been with their original management company for 23 years, so it was a big deal to them, and we had some big shoes to fill. So, really excited to have been able to build and come here today and talk about the growth and strategy and process we've put in place to help them be successful.
Excellent. Well, we're excited to have you. Thanks. Jean, tell us a little bit about yourself and ASHT.
Well, first, thank you for the invitation. Happy to be here. As you said, I'm Jean Terry, and I'm the Executive Director of the American Society of Hand Therapists, and that's an organization of occupational and physical therapists that specialize in treating and evaluating injuries and conditions of the upper extremity. And so that's shoulder, arm, elbow, forearm, hand, and wrist. I've been with them almost 9 years. They've been with Association Headquarters just over 12 years. Came from a very large association management company. Had lots of hesitation leaving. They were more focused on program execution than membership, but that changed quickly when they came to AH. And so happy to talk about some of the strategies that we put in place with the volunteer team as well.
Excellent. Well, it's interesting. Member acquisition and retention is not an either-or proposition, right? Both contribute to an association's brand and their culture. And today, I'm excited to ask you about what's worked and maybe what's not, and give our viewers some key takeaways that they might be able to implement at their associations. Jodi, NADCA formed in 1989, more than 30 years of member marketing efforts. They have a typically very high retention rate. How much of that do you think is related to the certification opportunities? And then what makes members stay past that certification journey?
Sure. So that, again, is a process that we had to build. So we inherited the certification that was developed pretty early on in the formation of the association. And, the whole chuck in a truck kind of derogatory connotation around duct cleaners was something that they carried, in that industry. And so NADCA's goal really was to create legitimacy and professionalism in the industry, and make you think about what's out of sight. You don't think about your air ducts. You see dust on a table, you clean it, right? But you don't think about what you don't see. And so then you get these guys that show up with a shop vac and they stick it in your vent and they tell you to clean your air ducts. And so growing the technology and the education and the tools and services available to the industry, and then in addition, educating the consumer, right? Because if you're not educating the consumer about the need for cleaning or helping them understand why they need to hire a trained, certified member, it just perpetuates that terrible reputation that the industry holds. So, building.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so at Association Headquarters, we work with lots of different types of associations, and one of the things that NADCA deals with, of course, that other associations don't, is you have the B2C challenge and the B2B challenge, right? So how do you differentiate, I guess, in focusing on member acquisition and retention on the business side, but making sure that you're educating your businesses on how to maintain and grow the consumer side of theirs?
Yeah, so as much as they're really two independent efforts, they're so reliant upon each other for the success of the association, because we can train you, we can certify you, but if we're not telling that consumer what the certification means and why it's important, none of it really matters, right? So we have very robust, something I really love that AH Marcom developed for us in 2016, which was the Breathing Clean campaign. And it's become our consumer brand, essentially. And it's everything that you can imagine about why to clean your air ducts, allergies, asthma, mold, when to hire an industrial hygienist, right? And we refer people to members of IAQA if they don't have an IH on staff. And again, interconnecting the associations that AH manages is another wonderful benefit I think that we bring as a company. So the Breathing Clean campaign has been phenomenal for us. Tremendous consumer outreach, big publications, food and wine, men's health. Really, you think you're going to read about duct cleaning in those magazines, and you see it, and you're like, oh, I'm a mom. I care, about my children's health. Maybe I'm going to clean my air ducts suddenly. And so you reach a market that would never even have an awareness of what the service is.
That parallel is interesting between ASHT and NADCA, two very different organizations. ASHT holds a unique space in the allied health community in that they're specialists. These are licensed occupational therapists and physical therapists first, but they have a specialty. And there's a different level of education that's needed for our organization as well, because it's easy to kind of rest in your laurels to say there are only 6,000 certified hand therapists in the world. We happen to have 3,700 of them, so it's easy. They should come to us. No one else is going to meet their needs. The parent organizations aren't going to meet their needs, but it takes work. And part of that work is educating the surgeon population and also educating the patient population that, yes, you can go to a general practitioner and they may be able to generally talk about your upper extremity condition, but we really need to educate that you need to go to a certified specialist, through their advanced study. They're well-versed in anatomy and in kinesiology, and they're going to improve your outcomes and have you get back to your normal life. And so that was part of the efforts that AH brought to the table as well, to have us take an audit to look at what we were sitting on. You can't just rest on your history, you can't just rest on your name, and you can't just rest on the fact that other organizations don't exist to serve your members. Because one of the challenges with a specialist organization is there's a choice that often has to be made. You have your state licensure to renew, your certification, and a lot of times your training is only limited to regional and not national as well. And so, we're third, fourth down that list. So it takes a lot more work for us to pique their interest in our programming, let alone membership, alone as well. And so we really had to work to understand who that audience was, what motivates them, and that's language that I frankly wasn't, clued in on, nor were my volunteers. And so it took the marketing department, AH, to really bring that expertise to the table and to train us, including their chief staff executive, who they thought knew everything about Marcon, but knew enough to bring a partner to the table as well. And so we, slowly dipped the toes in the water and just went with kind of the low-hanging tactics that really, resulted in great rewards, from retention and a acquisition standpoint for us as well.
So if I could just, something you said sparked a little thought. So in my industry, right, part of what we're doing is, creating market demand, right? Not just with the consumer, but also in the trade portion of the organization and the trade community. And so what we've done is built relationships with, we are attempting to build relationships with, because again, duct cleaning it's not like, yeah, everyone wants to clean their ducts. It's like, tell me why it's legitimate, right? We're battling the EPA and legislative things, but COVID has really opened up a door for us to kind of do that. So we're talking to architects, engineers, facility managers, like complete ancillary industry, right? But they touch building science, building management. And so how do we get those people to buy in to what we're selling and the value? And so when I think about your surgeons, how often are they, or what's your relationship with an association that, is going to recommend the hand therapists, and that they hire a certified, or they, I guess, hire is the right word.
And I say that the key to that was, and I might have said this earlier, getting outside of ourselves. Yeah. What our members told us in various surveys and focus groups is they, as practitioners, collaborate with surgeons, they collaborate with nurse practitioners, they collaborate with general physicians because that serves as a referral base. We were isolated only focusing on the therapist base, and so that encouraged us to be more in this space. And so from an advocacy perspective, we're at the table with the National Occupational and Physical Therapy Associations and the surgeons groups, and we're at the table. Our members are seeing that we're it's an integrated approach, just like healthcare is an integrated approach as well. And so they're seeing us operating in that larger space. And, we're being invited to do webinars and programming on their channels that our members are seeing. It's like, oh, that's my association. They're talking about my needs. They're on the bigger stage. And that also, on the flip side, it's also attracting surgeons. Wow, they can play in our space. They're knowledgeable, because at the end of the day, a surgeon, when they're done operating on a patient, they want to make sure that those outcomes are optimal, because, with the new healthcare systems in place, they have to report, months out, even years out on those outcomes. And so they want to make sure when they're referring their patient, for post-op treatment, that they're going to a certified or an advanced specialist that can really improve those outcomes. So I think it's all about being in the space, being in places where our competitors and also our collaborators are as well, because our members are already playing there and they're comfortable there and they don't want to see that division. And it really just helps cross-promote our messaging and gives us a platform that we may not have from a budgetary standpoint, as
For
well.
sure. We just experienced that. So I had 2 current board members travel to Chicago to participate in the Global Biorisk Advisory Council meeting. It's a symposium on indoor air quality in non-healthcare settings. And, you don't think about the traditional air duct cleaner. The picture you get is it's a blue-collar industry. And, some of it is, but we have mechanical engineers, we have people who are very educated and who can play in that space, and we've never sent them out to play. And so now, they attended this conference and they've made great connections, and we have really wonderful relationships with scientists and academics, and we're working on validating the work that we do with science. Because we can talk about it, it looks clean, it looks dirty, but when the science says healthcare outcomes are improved X%, or energy consumption's reduced, and you're saving, this is the dollar translation. That just creates a whole new world for our members to sell their service.
And you probably have had the same experience when those ambassadors go out to those allied organizations. They come back with stories about people in the audience, students or young professionals. I'm so glad that you were here. You validated, my decision to focus on this specialty. They're bringing back new members, and in many instances, they're bringing back corporate supporters to us as well, because we send them to these meetings with a slide deck, and it's a branded slide deck, and we ask them to to do their 2-3 minute ASHT elevator pitch, and so they're well versed in that, and we also send them out with FAQs, and how to answer questions as well, and so we reap the benefits from that. And so that wasn't an easy conversation, because you have to put resources to that. It's not only sending these folks out domestically or also internationally, but you need to be exhibiting where these folks are, and that those involve resources. But we tie metrics to that. How many conversations did you have? How many vendors did we sign up for a sponsorship or the annual meeting? What meetings, either formal or informal, did you have that may lead to further collaboration? So, we're attaching metrics to the effort. And it was slow building at first, but again, we're there, and people are seeing us there. And, it's not unusual when we're at a industry event, you'll see either a student or a young professional, even a veteran, they will make a beeline to us to say, wow, I found my tribe. I'm so glad you're here. I've been at this meeting for years and you're not here. What can I do? Can I take some flyers so I can hand them out in the next session that I go to? And that's just rewarding, to hear that.
Absolutely.
So I'm listening, and one of the best parts about being able to host something like this is you just learn so much from the folks that you're talking to and interviewing. very different industries, both associations very rich in history. ASHT, I think, is 45 years old this year. Is that right, Gene?
Yeah.
And clearly very different targets. Some would say on the opposite end of the spectrums, but so much commonality in what you just shared. I think so many associations and association executives think member value is an annual meeting, is certain programming, certain education. But what you've just talked about has very little to do with that, right? And one of my follow-up questions is going to be, why do members stay, right? Which is the key behind member retention. And you both just answered that very similarly. So I'm going to ask the question again, and in addition to what you've described, which is helping your members understand the importance of what relationships to build, right? And giving them exposure and advocacy in the case of NADCA on a bigger stage, what else? What else is not going to be listed necessarily in clear black and white writing on an association's website? What compels members to stay?
So I can say for NADCA, from the get-go, when they came to AH, it was service, right? Service delivery. We pride ourselves on being client-focused, client-centric. We are in the people business, and so when you give them that, and you're a resource to them, and you answer the phone, and they know your name, and you know their name, and you're able to easily help them with what they need. I think that goes a long way for my organization. It's a trade group. They have certain expectations. It's not always a nice conversation, right? Sometimes they're upset about something and there's a service lapse or whatever it might be, but the ability to be committed to all of our core values at AH and the things that we promise to deliver in our mission statement to our members and to the industry, I think that goes a very long way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And to add, another association tenet that was instilled upon me, at AH, that sticks and that I make sure our team and the board continues to adhere to is understanding the industry that you're in. You're not just there to answer phones, to organize a meeting, to launch a program. You're there to understand their industry. And part of our evaluation, our client service evaluation, is there are a couple of questions there. Does your staff individual understand your industry and know how to advance your industry? And that is something that is in the front of my mind every single day. And so for ASHT, part of that is understanding that there is a continuum along the professional journey. And so we need to make sure that we have member value at each stage of that continuum. And we can't just be focused on the veteran practitioners, clinicians, nor can we be only focused on the change of career or the new career therapists as well. So if you were to do an audit of all of our educational offerings, and map it against where someone's going to be in their career, there is not just something, but a variety of programming that is available. And I think that is what keeps members there, because they recognize that we're following them along that journey and that we will have something there to support them, whether it's research, whether it's clinical pearls that we are collating for them, whether it's just repackaging information in a different way. They know that we're there for them. And I think that's one of the key tenets, again, that we go back to is, where does this product, program, or service fit along the continuum that we have identified for our members? And if it doesn't quite fit, then it doesn't necessarily mean that we don't do it, but we have to make a better case for them to buy into it.
Yeah, as a marketing person, you're speaking my language when you talk about things like, what's the member journey? Mm-hmm. How do we segment members so we're not treating them all the same and we personalize what we're delivering to them? We're going to come back to that a little bit later in this segment, but a question I have for you is this. So there's a baseline, I would say, that all associations have to provide members, right? And we do things like basic programming. We have great annual meetings and conferences. We have social media engagement, right? Those, as a marketing person, I would say those are sort of a minimum point of entry, right, for an association to engage members. Do those basics still work for you? How do you employ them, and how do you keep them fresh?
So in-person meetings absolutely are, on the heels of COVID, like, you can't get enough space and enough, these people are so happy to come back together and see each other in person. so that value really never went away, and NADCA might be one of our only clients who I think we did one virtual meeting. We do 2 meetings per year. We met in person, and we had COVID protocols and safety and temperature checks and all the things that we've all read about, along this COVID journey that we've all been on. But the desire to meet in person and the value that you get, we're all pretty seasoned executives. I've been at this for about 26 years. The value you get when you go to a conference, Gene, is probably the conversation you have with, a peer, in the industry, less so than maybe what you might get from an educational session.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think as people, you talked about career mapping, and we do that for our association as well. We have several levels of credentials and certification. But when you talk about reaching that pinnacle, it's twofold. It's the guy who's reached the pinnacle, and he's really coming for that one nugget he might get at a conversation over lunch, right? We're talking to an exhibitor. And you've got the new guy or girl, because our industry is diversifying by the minute. But you have the younger one who is going to sit down with the seasoned executive and pick their brain and, and become a part of something that they're just now discovering can really help them take tools home to grow their business.
Yeah. The only thing I could really even add to that is when you ask the question, what keeps them there or motivated to engage, we've also upped our advocacy efforts as well, because at the end of the day, those are issues that impact practice, whether you are a clinic owner, you're in essence a small business owner, or you're working as part of a large health system. There are issues that keep you up at night. And there are several issues that span health organizations. When you talk about access to care, there are issues specific to occupational and physical therapists, and in particular, physical therapists, that decisions that state and federal legislators are making that impact their ability to deliver that care. When you're talking about not getting the right reimbursement levels for services that you deliver, or capping the number of visits someone can have, we need to get behind that. We need to fight the fight for them. And sometimes we will go it alone because it's really specific to hand therapy in a specific code or specific populations. But when we are invited by our larger ally organizations, we are there without hesitation to say we will fight that fight because it means something to our members. And I think that is just as important, or on the same ground, as what you had mentioned. Those individual conversations at a conference matter. The new resource that you're putting out that can benefit them. But fighting for their right to be in practice still means a lot. And that's something that we have done as well, to your point, is to keep them engaged. We believe, we're there from a content delivery standpoint. Yes, there's always room to grow, but we can't ignore the fact that there are struggles financially that our members, could face, and that their patients could face, and there are ways that we can get behind that.
Yeah.
We'll talk to me a little bit about how we budget for these sorts of things, right? And not necessarily in dollars and cents, because that's going to be relative to the industry and the association. But when you're starting your annual planning and you're having these conversations, and I want us to certainly acknowledge that COVID has changed so much of what we do in the last couple of years, but so think broader 5-10 year trend, right? So it sort of flatlines across, or we get sort of an indication of long term. Are these sort of standard programming features? If there's 3 to 5 things that we know we have to do every year, right? Let's say the annual meeting is one of them. But technology is changing, and the ability to grab somebody's attention is, goes from 6 things to 10 things we're looking at every day. So from a budgetary standpoint, are the basics, those standard programming features that you include every year, are you seeing the same kind of return? Are you investing more or less to allow for new? How do you have those conversations with the decision makers in your association to make sure that they're on board with what's happening new, but we're still maintaining the things that are working for us?
I say for me, recognizing I don't hold all the keys or the answers to that, and I need expertise at the table. I can up to speed top line and industry trends. But I'm going to consult with my Marcom team to say, I need you at the table. I'm building this budget. I need you to help me make the case to the members, whether I can do it or whether you're at the table with me. We need to be able to report on how this technology, how this practice is being used, specifically being used across other associations. And if you can, drill it down, especially your organizations as well. And by the way, we're also going to research our partners and our competitors. Are they doing it as well? And there are ways to get that information. Again, if you have good relationships with your partners, they will share what they're doing without giving you the numbers. And so it helps and elevates the calls when we can say XYZ Association has been doing this for 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, we're catching up. And here are the metrics as well. Doesn't always work, but when it doesn't work, it isn't a absolute no. It's this needs to go down the ranking list because these other things have come up. So let's table it. Let's bring that in mid-year if we find out that this program or these programs that we've scheduled for the first 2 quarters, came off well. But I really do think it's bringing the expertise to the table because whether you are an occupational physical therapist or duct cleaner, data matters. Data matters. All day long, they are making decisions in their practice, in their trade, based on data, based on research, based on best practice. And so getting them to also respect our trade as well. We're doing this because we've seen it work in-house across our 40 clients at AH, or globally we've seen this because we're out there in the industry with, volunteering with other organizations as well. So there's that respect that is there. That has to be earned and built. But if you have that, then it's easier to bring those experts to the table to advocate for the budget.
Welcome back. We are here still with Jodi and Jean, and we're talking about member acquisition and retention. And we took a brief break, and we were talking about member value, right? And engaging other experts and affiliated partners with our associations as a way of driving member benefit. And Jodi, tell us how we're doing that at NADCA.
Sure. So probably in 2014, the president at the time just had this great idea, like, hey, let's get together with some, other board members and leadership, staff leadership from some affiliated organizations, and let's talk about how we can partner, right? And we entered into some MOUs, memorandums of understanding, right? So, you do this, we get a free booth. Maybe we present at each other's conference, but we really find ways to tie together the services that our members are providing and how we can support each other. And then, it kind of grew a life of its own, and we would meet every year at a specific conference where it was the most like-minded conference where we all would be in attendance. So no added cost, right, to the association. We're there anyway. Let's get together for an hour in the meeting room and talk about what we're doing. And then we just, we decided to formalize it. And so we created the Allied Industry Partnership, and there's a group of 7 associations that are members. And what we agreed to do as sort of kicking off point is to review and decide to or not to approve, promote, and recognize each individual's standards, certifications as the standard, right? So when we're writing our NADCA is an ANSI accredited standard writing organization, and we have the standard for the duct cleaning industry. It's called ACR, the NADCA standard. So when we're writing our standard, we also have a general specification, any guideline document, anything like that, where it refers to something specific, where the expertise lies with another organization, then we reference them. And it's just cross-pollination. It's an awareness across bigger audience. And so we agreed to that, and now we all built a page on our website where we reference these organizations, and we refer to them. And to the point that Jean made earlier about advocacy, we've joined together for causes, right? The power of 7 associations with 100,000 members is obviously much greater than one with 5,000 members. So really seizing those moments where it's most impactful and where it makes sense, right? Because individually as an association, we're not going to get on board with everything that everyone feels is important to them. But where it makes sense and where it can benefit our members, the power of that relationship can really be tremendous.
Well, and the logic in what you said is very sound, right? From an efficiency, a cost efficiency standpoint, the amount of information that you can aggregate for your membership is obvious, but the emotional attachment, I think, is what my next question would be, is how do you get board members and key stakeholders on board with that kind of decision? Because I'm guessing that there was resistance, in some instances heavy resistance, because this is our brand, this is ours, they're a threat, right? Am I wrong? Is that some of what the conversation was?
That is certainly regarding our standard, right? Like, it's ours, and if anyone wants to make changes or get in that space and compete, we are very territorial, and I support them in that. But I think getting them part of the board member process and getting them to trust, to Jean's point earlier, when you're presenting, talking about big budget items that are coming up, and what are they, and they're not the typical meeting or marketing plan, but building that trust and the onboarding of a new board member every cycle, right? What does your onboarding process look like? What experience are you creating for the board member, right? They're joining, they don't really know what to expect all the time. Maybe they've served on another board, most of the time they haven't. How do you outline for them what their expectations should be of their volunteerism? Because as much as they're giving to the association, they should also be receiving, right? It should be enjoyable. They should feel engaged and motivated. There should be an inherent benefit that they feel as being a part of something. And so building those relationships and helping them learn and grow early on the value of the bigger picture, and kind of engaging with the market, beyond ourselves and beyond NADCA. That's where we are in the life cycle of our association. Not every association is there. And we weren't there 10 years ago. We were shoring up who we were and who are we as an industry and who do we want to be. And then we started the building blocks, right, to get there. And so if you present it that way in the onboarding process, and that's the way you structure your board meetings, that's the way the leadership, the elected president and executive committee members conduct themselves and choose to make decisions, then it just becomes the way that we do business.
Yeah, and I would add to that, when you focus on the opportunities as a part of a SWOT analysis, the O for opportunities, you're going to identify where your gaps are, but part of that conversation is, do we have the resources to deliver on this? Mm-hmm. And that's when I find it's even more valuable to bring in the partner discussion. Where can they augment? Mm-hmm. Where can they fill in? And it's surprising when you have that conversation, they're going through the same exercise. We have gaps as well. We need more therapy education, just like you need more surgeons education. So what new content can we create together versus, not keeping you at a distance? It's what new can we create, and that energizes a board member because it's in their, they're thinking of their strategic plan, and it's all about growth. And so if we're creating new content, we're creating new services or programs, how we get there matters, but in the end, it's new content for the membership. Mm-hmm. And it all comes from a needs assessment.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Gene. We, so at Association headquarters, we work with new associations all the time, and I've had an opportunity to work with one of our newest, the RIC, the REMS Industry Consortium, and new association, they're still figuring out, everything, right? And it's a really exciting time. But of course, what we want to do is drive member value from day one, because we know that's the key to sustainability. And we recently had a similar conversation, not in the same broad context of affiliated partners and how do we build alliances. It was much more fundamental about putting on their first annual event and the need for that kind of exposure. And what we were pushing from the marketing and communication side was partnering with existing events and associations already in the space. And rightfully so, there was an immediate sort of pause, right, in terms of thinking about it as a threat and wanting a little ego involved. We want to own this space and things like that. And the conversation that I presented was, well, we have to think about this as sort of what's the opportunity cost, right? Because if we're not putting the content out, if we're not having these conversations with members and potential members in this space, somebody else is. Right? We don't have the luxury of waiting 6 to 12 months. Somebody else is likely going to fill that void, and then it's much harder to be the second to produce that kind of content. So, great discussion.
Yeah, I think that's really what AH is so good at, because the thing that attracted me to come to work for AH and harass Bob and Mike for 3 years to hire me, quite frankly, until the right client fit came. But it is they're very progressive. Our company is progressive. Associations move notoriously slow. We're 10 years behind most trends, right? But at AH, I would, see people like Jean speaking at conferences and just think, wow, like they're really thinking outside the box, and they're ahead of the curve on everything. I think we actually have a book report called Ahead of the Curve.
We do.
As a matter of
It comes
fact.
out in a couple months.
Yeah, look at that tie-in. But literally, I really feel like that, the way that we run our business allows us to be creative and cross-pollinate. We talk about other clients, it's like NABO, right? They are professional organizers, and it's a really broad sense of what they do. But if we could give you a picture of it, it's, they might come into someone's house that you see on the TV show Hoarders, and they might help them organize. They might come to someone's home who's, had a healthcare issue, and, maybe they're with a walker or on crutches, and they actually help organize the home so that it's safe for them to navigate. You may have someone who had a health issue, and they have a case manager. One of our clients, CCMC, our largest client, very, very wonderful relationship we have with them. That case manager may say, you need to make sure your indoor air quality is, where it needs to be. So IAQA member might come in and, test the indoor air quality, and maybe the air ducts need to be cleaned. And the organizer has to create a pathway for this person who's, coming home with, in a recovery mode with health issues. If you think about the power of all those different organizations supporting this one situation, right? And maybe it's someone, with a lower extremity, problem, and they're getting therapy for that. They can't vacuum, right? So how are we going to create this space where, whatever it is, it's going to make their recovery successful? So the power of that, just alone at AH, allows us to bring together a wealth of information that, I don't think you can really get anywhere else.
And it can often be overwhelming, too. You were making the point about you can't wait 6 to 12 months. We have at our disposal all the best practices. We're seeing 40 organizations across the spectrum do great things in their industries. You're like, I want to get in on that. It's my turn to get in on that. But you have to hold steady, take the course, have the appropriate conversations. And I would say for the American Society of Hand Therapists, we have a podcast. We're a year into a podcast, and you would think we had this podcast 5 years ago. It's like we just need to do this. We have been doing webinars for 10 years now. This is just another iteration of that. And we just went all in, and we bought them the equipment from Amazon and set up home studios, and it is now one of the best member benefits that we have. And when we go to conferences, we have our flyers. You have a podcast. I can listen to this at the gym or in my car, and to have 60,000 subscribers a year out from a podcast for us for a specialized topic is amazing for us. But we were at risk of waiting. Well, let's wait a little bit and see if the industry is going to still be open to podcasts. Is this just something that's happening because we're in a COVID situation? It was strong even before COVID. It strengthened during the pandemic, and it's stronger now. But you just have to just go for it. And it's a curse and a blessing to have all of this expertise around you at AH, because you want to grab it and put it on the table in front of your clients. But you have to be respectful of the decision-making process and the budget process, but always hold true to your training and knowing what works in the association industry as well.
And we might be a little bit competitive, right?
Yes.
When we're comparing retention rates, I'm not gonna lie, I always expect to be at the top. And when I'm not, it's a problem, right? So, which I think is a great benefit to our clients, because we care, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Jean's doing what?
Right.
I just am hearing about this podcast, and I'm thinking, we have the thinking of like, is it gonna be around? Exactly what you said, and we haven't gone for it, and maybe we will.
Yeah, I would say do it, and we'd be happy to sit with you and talk about our learning process and the messaging we put in place. And we're now at the point where we're exploring sponsors, for it, because we have the metrics to support the
you know, the listeners.
Like the most organic way to build non-dues
Mhm.
revenue, right? Because,
Yeah.
you know, you're already building it, they're gonna come.
Yeah.